All right, so next I'm going to show you kind of the basics of your water on the outside. So when you're dealing with the water and also the dumping on the outside, there's three things you'll need to know. You have the gloves, you have a hose, and this is a water pressure regulator. These are all found in the exterior storage. These gloves and this water pressure regulator are found in the box. I mentioned when I was in the other video, a box with miscellaneous stuff. That's where you find both of these two things. Okay. So let me orient you to a few things. So here we have two different water inputs or sources. This one is your freshwater connection. So this is where we fill the water that you would use to drink or to shower. You just literally put a hose in here and you fill it up. I'm gonna leave it either full or empty depending on the situation, depending on what you want. But say you're using it and you run out of water, you just put a hose in there and you turn it on. If it's empty, it can take about 10 minutes to fill, so it can take a lot of water, about 30 gallons. Or if you have like some, portable water tanks, you could, that you just handheld, you could pour it in there. It's not anything you screw in or anything. This is, say you're at like a KOA or a place that has a water hookup. This is where it's automatically pressurized, so you're gonna put in a hose here and twist it in and leave the water pressure on the entire visit. That's what you would use here. Now, before you just put the hose in here, for this, you need to use the water pressure regulator. And this just screws in really easily. It's pretty simple to use. And then you screw the hose into this. You use this because you don't always know what kind of pressure the city pressure is at, where you're at, and it can blow out the lines. So if do not just plug your hose into this without this water pressure regulator, okay? So again, that's if you're at like a KOA or a place that has established water hookups, okay? I already talked to you about the shower. So final thing to show you on this side with water is dumping. All right, so I'm wearing the gloves. You saw me wearing these earlier. This is when it's time to dump the trailer. So empty out the water that you've used, whether it's water in the toilet or whether water in like the shower or the sink. So to do this, I'm gonna walk you through that process. Now you don't have to do this, but if you don't, I charge a fee for me to do it. And you have to communicate with me ahead of time. But most people elect to do this themselves, and let me walk through the process. So you pull in your trailer to an RV dump. You can Google that, like a lot of gas stations have an RV dump. So you pull up, and both your dumps are on this side. Now you'll see there's two. One is called a sewer outlet connection. That's sometimes called black water. The other one is called, this gray one, it's called the wastewater holding tank. This is sometimes called gray water. So in order to dump these, you're first gonna dump the black water. And to do that, you're gonna need the hose. So the hose is actually up here in this cap. So you turn this cap like this to open it, and then you pull this hose out. Now sometimes this hose can be hard to pull out. It creates like a vacuum. If it is hard to pull out, you just open up that cap, okay? But wear the gloves before you do this. This stuff is touch sewer water, so you wanna make sure you're wearing gloves throughout this whole process. But what you'll ultimately do is you'll pull out the hose, and the connections are fairly self-explanatory, but you'll pull out the hose and you'll connect one side of the hose, it doesn't matter which, you'll pull off this cap here. You connect one side to here, and then the hose kind of bends, you'll find when you're playing with it, and you aim the other side at the hole at your RV dump. And then you're gonna pull this switch. And what you're gonna do is you grip it and you just pull it out. And when you pull it out like that, that releases all of the black water. And the black water, again, is your sewer water that's been in the toilet and whatnot. When you pull that, so I guess something you should do before you open this lid, you should make sure this thing is pushed in tight. So you connect it, you aim it, you pull it out, and the water is gonna start draining. Now you're not quite done yet. So when you're doing just the black water, just this one, you take this hose that was in the exterior storage, okay? You can see this one here, it says black tank flush. So you're just gonna connect the hose, it just screws right in. Most RV dumps, almost every one, has a water faucet. So you connect the hose here and connect the other side to the water. And then once you've opened this valve, you turn on that water at the RV dump, and it's just gonna send fresh water through, and it's essentially just flushing out all the nasty water, and you leave that running for 3 minutes, okay? When you're done with that, it's been 3 minutes, what you're gonna do is shut off that water, okay? And then you're gonna wait for this to kind of all that remaining water to flush out. Finally, when you're disconnecting it, what you need to do is just make sure all the water's out of the hose. So you push this thing in, close it, and then just lift up the hose and kind of fish it over to the end. You're kind of just, before you disconnect the side, you're just making sure all the gunk is out of the hose and into the hole, if that makes sense. So that's the black water. So then, again, this thing should be closed by now. You disconnect the hose and put the cap on, and then you walk over and you do the same thing with your gray water. Your gray water is like your sink and your shower water. So it's dirty water, but it's not nasty sewer water, if you will. You do the same thing, so you take off this cap, you connect the hose, it's still aimed at the exact same hole, and then you pull this lever out, it's this gray one, you pull that out to release the water. The only difference is, there is no flush with the hose, so you don't have to use the hose or leave the hose on for 3 minutes. So you just open this, and once the water is all drained out, it may take 30 seconds to a minute. Once that's all out, then you just push this closed, push the gray valve in, and then do the same thing, kind of fish it, make sure all the water is out of the hose, then disconnect it, and then you're just gonna, it's kind of like an accordion, you'll accordion that hose together and shove it, and shove it in here and close it. A common mistake, some people will try to say, they'll say, oh, the hose, it won't close like an accordion. Usually the reason that is this hose here has a cap on both sides. And if you don't take off one of these caps, it creates a vacuum and you can't stretch it out or compress it. So when you're trying to stretch out the hose or put it back together, make sure one of these caps are off of it. But once you've closed it in, you put the caps on both, and you can shove it in there and lock it up. And then you can throw away your gloves and you're all done with dumping. So one other thing you can do, say it's at the end of your trip and you're about to come home and you have a long drive, you can actually empty out all of the fresh water. Say you have like a pretty full tank of fresh water, and that's just weight that you're having to pull, and it reduces like your gas mileage while you're driving. You can empty out all the fresh water. If you want to do that, where it is if you're going to have to get down, and you'll find here, there's this little tiny white knob. And this just unscrews. If you unscrew this knob, water will just start flowing out, and you can just let all the water drain out. And then when it's empty, you screw the knob back in. It'll take about, like, if it's a full tank, it'll take like 5 minutes to drain out, 10 minutes. It's on pretty tight. So in the exterior storage, there's a tool set with some pliers. You can use those pliers in order to undo that plug, and then use it to tighten the plug back up after. But that's how you would release all the fresh water if you wanted a dry trailer, if you will, for easier loading. I'd recommend that if you've got a smaller vehicle, and you'd be surprised how much of a difference it makes pulling it dry versus pulling it full of water.